One of the biggest keys that's jumped out at me recently has been that we gravitate towards pessimism over optimism. So we look for the worst case scenario and we look for doomsday prophecies and like all these things to varying degrees. And the psychology beneath that is just um, loss aversion. Like we don't want to lose anything, we don't want to risk what we have. And it's like in this theory that I'm parroting right now, the idea is that like we've evolved that way because it was more important to focus on dangerous negative things that could kill you or like ruin your chances of reproducing than it was to focus on positive things and things that could benefit you in some way. Like the danger was always more important than the positive good thing that you wanted. So we're like they in this like hard science way of talking, we're like biologically hardwired to seek the negative. And like I don't know, you hear this in all different ways, but it's just jumped out at me recently because obviously this time period, this era that we're living through, it's like the perfect conditions for pessimism and like doomsday vibes to thrive. It's like, if you create the perfect conditions for something to grow, you expect it to grow. It's just what's going to happen. So we're in this world right now, and it's like this truth or this idea has just been something that's snapped me out of a lot of my own negative thinking. And this is really weird, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. As I was like sort of witnessing myself gravitating towards the pessimism and like placing higher importance on all of the negative information, I realized a really weird thing. It's like this tendency to almost fantasize about the worst case scenario. And I feel like I'm not going to be alone in this. So, it would be cool to live through a revolution and like be on the side that was awakened and like fought against the oppressors. Like without getting too real about it, just playing with it in your mind in a kind of fantasy way. It's like, I want to say like you kind of want it. Like there's this part of me that's like, how cool would it be to live through like a crazy revolution? Or like if all the doomsday stuff was true and we were like forced underground and like, like what all the doomsday preppers are into came real. Like I think that we have a tendency beyond this tendency for pessimism to almost like fetishize like the negative, like, and fantasize about like this worst case scenario world. And that's probably reinforced by like pop culture narratives and things like these movies that come out one after the other where there's like an apocalypse or a dystopian future. There's like all these things that go wrong and the main characters, like we're identifying with that main character, like we want them to succeed and we're like so emotionally invested in like what would I do in this situation, and we put ourselves in the character's shoes. And this is just me talking. Like I said, this might sound weird, but I at the same time I feel like I'm not alone in it. Like we have this weird thing where like, yeah, it would be really cool if everything went to shit so that we could overcome it. And that's probably a very like Western like privileged, well-off thing to do. And in the present moment, I'm like, I think it's boredom. I think it's driven by boredom and like this weird sense of boredom because we don't have anything to relate our experience to. We only know our own experience. But I think deep down inside of ourselves, we know that like this is too easy. Like living in a developed country in the 21st century, everything you want and everything you need is pretty much available, and you really can't. It's pretty crazy to go without your necessities and things like this. So like in that sense, it's kind of why I was craving that big, um, like driving around the country in a ute and like having nothing but like a knife and like an esky and a swag and like surviving out there, even though like I was simulating the experience and I could have just like gone back home and like, you know, chilled out at any time. Like I made it real. And I think it's that same tendency. And I think now that I lived it out, like it's easier for me to let go of like, what am I doing? Like, why am I fantasizing about a life that's really hard? Or like fetishizing like difficulty? Like, why not let that go and replace it with something healthier and like actually build a solid foundation for my life, which is where I'm at now. And, you know, enjoy building from there. Like I guess it's escapism is just, that just came out of my mouth. Like another form of escapism, like if we can create this boogeyman or this like dystopia or this revolution or like some kind of fantasy about the world going to shit, and we create this enemy, and it's encouraged, by the way, because of like it helps like with politics and marketing and like all of these things. They use fear to enhance their positions, you know, like, so it's encouraged in that way, and it's fed, like we're pouring fuel on the fire, like politics and marketing and media, like just pouring fuel on that fire of pessimism and that fantasy of like overcoming this apocalyptic dystopian future. Like it's so like in the moment right now, I'm just like, of course, of course, of course. But like it's escapism because like we don't know how to deal with the where we are right now. Like there are challenges in the 21st century, but they're new challenges, and there's no examples of how to move forward. Like there's always like we're evolving so rapidly, and there's so much possibility, and there's so many new paths that you could take. Like you could specialize in all of these new skills that didn't even exist 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you know, like with the technological advancements that are happening, and the information being so readily available around the world, and everybody being so interconnected, the collaborative force of like 7.8 billion people or whatever we're up to, just like going faster and faster. There's so much. And I think that's like actually intimidating, because like of course, like, yeah, it feels easy to just like have food in the fridge and a roof over your head for some of us, you know, like I said, it's a privileged, like, modern, like high socio-economic in relation to the rest of the world thing to be this comfortable. But like we could still be solving more problems. We could move forward from where we are, but it's like easier to make up this fairy tale about this dystopian future and this apocalypse or whatever you want it to be. Like this whole world's going to down the shitter, and like we've got to fight against it. Like as much as there's truth in, like, you know, there's agendas, and there's politics that you don't agree with, and media that you don't agree with, marketing that you don't agree with, but that's all just stuff that you don't agree with. Like for me in the moment, like I'm just like, I'm looking at this inside myself, because I'm like, why continue to do this to myself? Why not like actually be where we are and move forward from here? And I think in the past it was like this sense that it's all that I knew, or I felt like it's all that I knew. Like this is who we are, and this is where we are. I don't know. But there's definitely this really interesting thing that's occurring where like we're almost unconsciously wishing for the end of the world so that we have something to overcome. When like you've got plenty of challenges and obstacles in your own life, even if they are simulated, like, get a degree, get a job, those things are no longer seeming so arbitrary to me. And the thing that changed with all of that is I made it my own mission. Like, I'm no longer doing it because that's what society tells me to do. I've decided on a bunch of goals and objectives that I want to succeed at. And then when I've asked, how do I get there? The answers have been like study and work and like read these books, do these things. So all of a sudden I'm choosing to do the things that I used to be like, what's the point? Because it's just leading me on the journey that like I'm programmed to go on, like, or that society wants to program me to go on. But now I'm like, I don't know, I want to actually participate, but I want to participate on my own terms and walk a path that like is mine. And before it felt like you couldn't do that. But now I've like flipped my whole perception of reality. Like every path is going to be unique. Unless we look at our lives as like we're just going through the factory of society and we're all going to be cookie cutter copies of each other. Like if that's how you see it, that's what you're going to get. But if you actually want to challenge the status quo and like try new things and innovate, be a creator, like that's what you're going to get too. So one of the biggest insights that I always come back to is like, don't be reactive and like constantly responding to what's out there. Be proactive and be creating from within yourself, like what you want to bring to the world and like what you want to influence. Because, as long as you're reacting to everything out there, you're just like the sum of all of those things that you're reacting to. Whereas when you're proactive, you're the sum of all of your own ideas and creativity and things that come from within you. And you're still going to get that tangled up in your response to the external world. But the more that you can come back to yourself and be like, what do I want to do? And like, what do I make of this experience on this planet? Like, what is it that would be really cool to experience and create and share and contribute? Like, that's what it comes down to as well. It's not what I want. It's like, what do I want to give? Like, what do I want to contribute? What would be so cool to be able to hand to another human being or to hand to the world? And some of the things that I find really cool to contribute are like freedom. But like, you can't give anybody freedom, but you can help them think and feel their way to the insights that will free them from their own constraints, because you can't see what's holding people back. Only they know that. And even they don't know that consciously. So they have to explore themselves to find out what it is. So I like to contribute like space and resources and like time. I like to help people like find out like what the first step is at least. I like to help people like crack their own code, so to speak. That's really, and in the big picture, like what I'd like to create is just like more meaning and more reason to begin the journey in the first place, so that there are less people that are walking around feeling like there's no path to walk and we're just like all sort of shuffling along with the crowd because the crowd's going in this direction and that's where we've got to go. Like, I don't see it that way anymore. I see it much more free. I just want to like create. So yeah, it's weird, like that whole, we're like drawn to like the pessimistic dystopian future or the dystopian narrative. And like in a weird way, I would say that a lot of us kind of wanted it at some point in our lives. It's just an interesting thing to bring attention to. And like I said, like video games and movies and stuff have been perpetuating, which means keeping it going for a long time. Because the more we're reacting and we're in fear, fear and anger and anything that activates the amygdala, which is the part of your brain that's like been there for the longest in evolutionary terms, if we're talking evolutionary theories and stuff. Your amygdala is where like your animal instincts sort of thing comes from, like fear and anger and like just stimulus response. It's the fastest part of your brain. The more that we're there, the less we can use like the more advanced parts of our brain and the advanced parts of our faculties and our awareness. So like you don't want to spend too much time there. But like at the same time, we're kind of addicted to it. And I think it's familiarity. It's like going back to what you know. And what could be more familiar than the part of ourselves that's been there for like millions of years, the part of our brain that's physically like through evolution that like we've had as a species for the longest, like that's familiar to us. So we just like stick to the program. Let's just keep making sure that nothing kills us and nothing bad happens. And it's like, it's a weird time because like we're all going meta on ourselves. Like we're the people who are becoming conscious of how their own awareness works are the ones that are like evolving beyond it. Like you can't just like intuitively decide that you're going to outgrow these instincts, you can't just like automatically do it. It's like a process of like self-awareness and introspection and contemplation and looking at yourself. Like you can't just have it. You gotta work through it. And the people that are spending the most time developing that meta awareness are the ones that are achieving these results and like, doing these things that the rest of the world just like, or not the rest of the world, but other people who just sort of are still in that autopilot kind of mode where they're not thinking that much about like why they are the way they are, and they're not exploring like personal development things. They're like kind of just like, how do they get so much done? Or like, and I think one of the main things that helps you get so much done is just that there's less programs that you're still running. Like you've let go of so much stuff that was just a waste of energy, that you actually just have more time and you have more energy and you have more awareness per day. It's almost like you actually have longer days, because like maybe you used to spend like 8 hours of your day in a trauma response basically, or like emotionally volatile or reactive, and then you have to spend so much of your time dealing with all of that stuff that's happening inside of you, that by the time the day's over, you haven't had a moment to actually be in the driver's seat and creating from like balance and just like doing whatever you want to do, because every single minute of your day is a response to something outside of you. It's like not that crazy to be able to do whatever you want to do when you actually have time to do it. It is that simple. Creating more time. And then what do you do with that time? Trying to figure out how to free myself even more, I guess. Free myself completely. To be able to do what I want, when I want, how I want, with who I want. More often, like all the time. But like not like I just want to, like not like hedonistic, hedonism is like just, it's almost like a religion, but it's not. It's like a philosophy, I guess, where all that being a human is about is seeking pleasure. Like hedonism's like how can I maximize how good I feel all the time? So like that's like kind of what people think when you talk about freedom and having unlimited time and unlimited resources to do whatever you want. They're like, I would just do all of the fun shit and all the shit that feels good. But like truly, if you're going to be free and you're going to feel fulfilled, you're probably not going to want to do that. Like as you move further along the journey, your values change and like your focus kind of changes as you realize that that stuff isn't working. Then you start to think like, I want to be free just so that I can actually contribute more, just so that I can actually do something that feels meaningful and like that I'm helping more people. And in my case, I just want to help more people become more free. So yeah, that's my video journal for today. If you got anything out of it, maybe pass it on to somebody else you know who may benefit, or any of these journals. If one of them comes to your mind and you're like, Brett needs to see that video, I'm going to send it to him right now. That's the best way that these videos are actually spread, not just like a vague like Facebook share. Not that there's any problem with that, share however you want, but yeah. Also click the like button for me, leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and go check out kylibs.com for more resources.